Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, along with Johnny B. Ken Weaver out today, Jay Harper in. Matt Bassett joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Matt, it's been a minute. Hope you're doing well.
It has, Dan. It has. Good morning.
Good morning. So you folks remember Matt did a lot of fill-in work for us here in the last 6 months or so, and very much appreciate that. And Matt, you threw out your back, so you have had... You clearly are unable to reach the remote control. You were more than likely watching George Stephanopoulos over the weekend. I want to play this audio for you and get your opinion on it. I've already mentioned it this morning, but I'm curious as to what you think about this. Stephanopoulos talking about in his amazement that you've got Donald Trump and Joe Biden. They are now tied. This is what Stephanopoulos said over the weekend.
It is kind of shocking in a way that despite all of the baggage that Donald Trump carries, he's tied with Joe Biden right now.
Now, let me ask you, Matt. I mean, are you as shocked as George Stephanopoulos is regarding the fact that Biden and Trump are now tied from a national polling standpoint? Presidential elections are won and lost in the states, but it just seems like a lot of people in the media are just surprised by this, and I'm really not. What say you?
I'm surprised that they are surprised at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan, you mentioned I had back surgery, and I'm sitting here, and they have me on the good pills, and I watched a couple news cycles, and you get a little paranoid, and I was really convinced at some point that the rapture had happened and the big guy forgot to come and get me. I mean, the news cycles have been so bad, but what you're seeing here with the Stephanopoulos is they're coming to grips. The reality is setting in that he probably cannot win, and I think you're seeing the very beginning of them coming to grips with that. And I think it's going to be one of these things where they're going to realize if they run him and if they run Kamala Harris, that almost anyone on the Republican side will be competitive and will be able to beat them. And I think you're going to see the panic set in, and they're going to look to pivot away from him as quickly as possible. Because if we realize that they're vulnerable, they're going to come to the same conclusion.
Well, one of the things that, and this was part of my take, is that they seem to be focused. I don't know if you saw the whole segment, but it's George Stephanopoulos, it's Donna Brazile, it's a couple of other talking heads, and they're hyper-focused on, Trump's indictments. And so part of my thing with all of this is, okay, so you can sit here and they're talking about this, you got a Wall Street Journal poll out there, you've got, some other polling out there as well, and it does show that, Biden is going down and Donald Trump is going up, but they're hyper-focused on Trump's indictments, when in reality, it's starting to feel like this is just something that the left and the media, they're just trying to foster. But in reality, the American people are experiencing inflation and rising costs. Of course, we all know what's going on with the border, the war in Ukraine. I think there's a lot of people that are disgusted with the amount of money that we're giving to Ukraine with absolutely no end in sight. And of course, we all know what's going on with China. And so with all of those, and, earlier I gave folks the numbers, Joe Biden is upside down in all of those different issues and topics. And the other part about this is that the Wall Street Journal article also showed, and the polling shows, that the American people find Donald Trump far more, and I mean far more, accomplished than Joe Biden. So while you got these knuckleheads in the media hyper-focused on, oh my gosh, I can't believe, Donald Trump, a guy with 91 indictments, the Republicans will vote for anybody, he's going to be a felon. The American people are looking at the direction of our country, and they're worried about it. That's what they're voting on. That's what they're discussing.
Yeah, I think Donna Brazile's takeaway, in her own words, were these numbers gave her great concern and great pause, because when you drill down into the numbers, they asked, who do you feel is a more accomplished president?
Yep.
And Trump was way ahead in those numbers. When they asked, who do you think would be better on the economy? Trump was way ahead in those numbers. I mean, you have people at the beginning of the month that are paying off credit card bills with the 21% interest rate, and they send all their minions out to do the Sunday shows, and they're telling us how great Bidenomics is going.
Yes.
And they're realizing that nobody is buying that. Nobody. And by the way, I caught your piece when you were talking about the guy who authored the book on Biden, and I think you were spot on saying it was a puff piece when they're describing a micromanager who's too involved and cares too much. I think they were talking about Jimmy Carter, because there's nobody on the planet thinks that is a description of Joe Biden. I mean, I don't have on any authority that at this point someone's chewing his food, but we're getting pretty close.
Yeah, you are right, Matt Bassett. Now, I want to play you that Donna Brazile audio because I think that as I'm, talking about policy, you've got, Brazile and George Stephanopoulos and Susan Page from USA Today. They're all, again, still hyper-focused on Trump's indictments. And so this is part of what Donna Brazile said.
The problem is, and the biggest challenge we face as Democrats, I say we because I'm a Democrat, is that young voters, young Black and Latino voters, they're not ready to come back to the party. They're not even looking at the so-called messaging that's being sent to them about the economy, about climate change, about student debt relief.
How dare those young Black and Hispanic adults think for themselves? But see, here's the thing, as Brazile, and I'm not going to play any more of her, but here's the thing. And there's a big article in the Daily Mail that came out today. Staggering figures reveal 1.2 million U.S.-born workers have lost their jobs in the last 30 days, replaced by 688,000 foreign-born staff. So in other words, what's happening, and Matt, you know this as well as I do, is that you have, young black adults and legal Hispanics as well. Their jobs are being taken by illegal aliens coming across our southern border. That's why they're not coming back to the Democrat Party, because they're seeing what is going on with the Democrat Party and with Joe Biden and with these open borders, even though they're trying to tell us that they're closed. So what did you think about the comment from Donna Brazile? She's worried that, the young Black and Hispanic voters are not coming back to the Democrat Party. They're refusing to listen to the White House's talking points, and they're actually thinking for themselves.
Well, her point was that the messaging is not working. That you can't message bad policy. And I think that's their number one problem is what's showing up in all these polls is it's not that they don't know what the White House is doing. They don't agree with what the White House is doing. And so that's their fundamental problem is that none of their policy works. Their policy on the border was perhaps their worst policy. Their policy on the economy is clearly not working. Their policy on not prosecuting criminals is turning the major cities that are run by Democrats into hellholes. And so they just, not only do they have the policy problem, but then they do have the problem of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. What I found interesting was, I don't know if you've heard that they're actually in talks between the DeSantis camp and Gavin Newsom camp about having a debate between the two of them that would be moderated by Fox News' Sean Hannity. And what I found very interesting was the way that the White House responded to this. The White House said, "Oh, well, that's fine. Gavin Newsom is the spokesperson for the White House. We don't have a problem." And you juxtapose that with the way the vice president's office responded to it. Kamala Harris, they said it was completely disrespectful and that the ticket is Biden-Harris.
Oh, interesting.
And what I found is that Kamala Harris is very, very threatened by this. And I think the White House was probably a little concerned, but if that debate were to come off and Gavin Newsom were to do a good job, they're going to have a serious problem. And again, I keep going back to the moment that Democrats realize they cannot hold on to power with Joe Biden, and I think that will become very, very clear in the next few months. I think they're going to look to pivot away, because if they went with anybody else, they get rid of the Biden problem, but more significant to them, they get rid of the Kamala Harris problem, because she will be a massive drag on the ticket. Because for all the age reasons that we see, if you vote for Joe Biden again, you're really voting for Kamala Harris. And there is no way to message that.
You can't. And the problems that the Democrats have is that you've got an incompetent president. I mean, just putting aside what I would say is the clear early signs of dementia, you put that aside, you have the ineffective policy decisions. Then you go into Kamala Harris, who, I mean, she's got a lot of issues herself with making sense. I mean, she has one verbal train wreck after another, and she is also seen as someone who is incompetent. So whether it's at the top of the ticket or in the VP's office, they just don't look good. Now, let's switch gears and talk about the Republicans for a minute. So you have Donald Trump, Matt Bassett joining us. You have Donald Trump, of course, going up in the polls. And every time they try to do something to eliminate Donald Trump, he just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And so, you know, I guess my question is where do we take this? There's the polling that shows that Trump is, you know, doing well. He's matched Biden now, generally speaking, in this national poll. We also know that in some some of the states where elections are won and lost, where you've got Biden and Trump also very close. And so, what do you make of the electability of Donald Trump?
Well, I think Republicans, I think I'm seeing it the same way as the concerned Democrats are, in that I have seen polling in the states that matter, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan.
Battleground states.
That in head-to-head battles, they have Donald Trump ahead now by 9 points on average in each of those states, respectfully. Mm-hmm. So I think they're going to have a real problem there. And just going back to the four indictments and what they've tried to do there, I mean, the one thing about human nature, Dan, is if you want someone to do something, tell them they can't. And it seems like the left and the media has said you can have any candidate you want, Republicans, but you can't have Donald Trump. And if you look at it on a bar chart, with each endorsement or with each indictment, his poll numbers have gone up and up and up. So you know he's obviously 40 points clear of anybody. And I think the thing what would be interesting is if you juxtapose that, say Ron DeSantis was ahead by 40 points. There's this narrative that kind of comes from the left that says we'd be okay with that. We'd let you have him.
Right.
But the reality is they would be going after him with lawfare the exact same way that they are going after Trump. They would sue him for sending illegal immigrants to all the northern states and all the sanctuary city states. Right. They don't have presidential documents. They'd go after him for overdue library books. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't matter what it is. They would have the same vitriol towards either Ron DeSantis or Vivek that they would against Donald Trump. So they're just going to go after whoever the front runner is because they are desperate to hold on to power.
Well, and you're right, Matt, and I appreciate you joining us here on Nashville's Morning News. You're right. When, you know, the media and the Democrats, they're trying to 14th Amendment Donald Trump. And so you're right. It's like they're trying to tell us that we cannot have the candidate that we want with Donald Trump. And so it's like the conservative movement, we've all just said, oh yeah, really? Hold our beer and watch us. And by the way, that beer clearly not Bud Light. Anyway, 723 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you, Matt.